Hello and welcome to AWS Glue Training. Here we'll be discussing about how to create a visual ETL jobs, manage connections, crawlers, databases in Glue, add classifier, manage workflows, and job monitoring. First is creating visual ETL jobs. Log into the AWS console home, then search for Glue. On the left panel, choose on ETL jobs. There are three types of jobs: Visual ETL, Notebook, and Script Editor. For this activity, choose Visual ETL. Here is a step-by-step procedure on how to set up a visual ETL job. First, rename your job to your preferred job name. On the screen, you can see the Add Node, and you can see the Sources, Transform, and Target tabs. First is choose Sources, then locate Amazon S3, then click it. Provide the S3 path of your datasets, and make sure to click Infer Schema to know the data format of your data. Next is an Actions or Transformation tab. There are a lot of options on how you can transform the data. For this activity, choose Change Schema. As seen in the pipeline, the source has a connector for Transform Node, which can be customized on the right side panel. Change Schema, the ability to change formats and drop columns from source datasets. Then, in Targets, choose Amazon S3 again. This means we will be transforming data from S3 source, then store the transformed data back to S3, but on a different path. Before you can save the job, you must go to the job details. Here is a detailed description of each job name and description. Give your Glue job a clear name. Description is optional, but useful for context. IAM role defines what AWS services the Glue job can access: S3, CloudWatch, Redshift, etc. Job type and Glue version. Type is predefined. Always use the latest Glue version to avoid deprecated features and compatibility issues. Language. Choose the programming language used for your ETL logic, for example, PySpark, Scala, worker type. Controls the CPU and memory allocated to the job. Auto scaling recommended. Enable automatic worker scaling if your data volume changes frequently. Number of workers. Determines processing capacity. More workers generally mean faster job execution. Job bookmark. Tracks processed data so the job can continue from where it left off, avoiding reprocessing. Flex execution. Ideal for non-urgent workloads where fast start time and consistent execution aren't required. Helps reduce cost. Retries. Specifies how many times the job will retry automatically if it fails. Job timeout. Sets the maximum runtime before Glue stops the job to prevent runaway executions. Best practice. Paths. Store script path, logs path, and temporary path in a designated S3 bucket or folder per project for better organization. Other configurations. Keep the remaining default settings as shown, except for the paths mentioned. Connections. Connections are created separately before they can be used in a Glue job. For now, leave this blank since we are not connecting to a database. We'll discuss how to create connections later. Python libraries and dependencies. Allows you to attach Python libraries, dependent jars, and referenced files that the Glue job can call during execution. Job parameters. Used to pass runtime parameters to the Glue job, making configurations flexible without changing the code. Useful when values need to change per job run. Parameter naming convention. Job parameters usually start with a double dash, followed by the parameter name. Tags. Key value pairs used to organize, manage, and track Glue jobs for cost allocation, ownership, and governance. Next is connections. Go back to the AWS console, then search for AWS cons or Dordado. Choose connections, connectors. How Glue talks to data. Think of connectors as adapters or drivers that let AWS Glue communicate with different data sources. Pre-built connectors exist for common sources like databases, S3, and cloud services. You can also create custom connectors for unique or unsupported data sources. Connections, saved access details. Connections store the actual connection information to a data source. Includes JDBC URL, authentication credentials, network settings, and database details. Commonly used for database connections via JDBC. Here we will create a connection. On Connections, click Create Connection. Select a data source. Choose the data source you want to create a connection for. Browse available sources. By default, all supported data sources are shown in a grid layout. You can browse or filter to find the data source you need. Proceed to the next step. Once the data source is selected, choose Next. Connection details. The fields displayed will change depending on the selected data source. Examples: Amazon Document DB. Enter the Document DB endpoint URL. Amazon Aurora. Select the Aurora database instance and provide the database name. Amazon Aurora. Required details. Credential type. Choose username and password or AWS secrets shown. Provide the details required to construct the JDBC URL. If using a VPC, enter the required VPC and subnet information. Finalize the connection. Choose Next. Review the connection settings, then select Create Connection. Next is testing an AWS Glue connection. Access AWS Management Console and open the AWS Glue console. Navigate to Connections. In the navigation pane, under Data Catalog, choose Connections. You can also access it via Data Connections in the navigation pane. Select the connection. Check the box next to the connection you want to test. Test the connection. Choose Actions. Then select Test Connection from the drop-down. Choose an IAM role. Select an existing IAM role or choose Create IAM role to create a new one. The role must have permissions to access the data store. Confirm and run test. Choose Confirm. The test will start and may take several minutes to complete. Review results. If the test fails, choose Troubleshoot for guided resolution steps. Choose Logs to view detailed logs in CloudWatch requires proper IAM permissions. Next is Databases. Once again, go back to the AWS console and locate for AWS Glue. Then, on the navigation panel on the left under Data Catalog, choose Databases. Click Create Database, then input the database name, and then click on Create Database button. Going back to the Databases page, you must see your newly created database. Click on the new database, and you will be redirected to your created database page. Currently, there is no tables associated yet. Now moving on to crawlers. Open the AWS Glue console and choose Crawlers. Click Create Crawler and provide the name, optional description, and tags. For data source configuration, choose No existing Glue tables yet. Click Add a data source and select Amazon S3. Choose how the crawler scans data. All subfolders, new subfolders only, or based on events. Select in this account and enter the S3 path of the data source. Configure how subsequent crawler runs update metadata, then continue. Next is choose the IAM role and make sure the IAM role has sufficient privileges to access data sources. Then choose the database, where you want to store the datasets. In this case, use the newly created database earlier. Choose On Demand if you have not yet identified the frequency of crawler runs, then click on Next. Here is the status once successfully created the crawler. Next is adding classifiers. Go back to the AWS console home, then AWS Glue. On the navigation panel on the left under Data Catalog, choose Classifiers, and then click Add Classifier. On the classifier page under Classifier Details, provide a classifier name of your choice. In this case, we will be using CSV file type. Below are some properties based on the file form. For this activity, use comma as delimiter and double quote as quote symbol, and then click on Create. On the classifiers page, you will see the XV classifier we have created. You can now attach this to crawlers. Moving on to workflows. Shown here is a sample of an existing workflow. To access the workflows, once again in the AWS console home, search for AWS Glue, then on the left panel under ETL jobs, click on Workflows. Choose Add Workflow and complete the Add a New ETL Workflow form. Enter your desired workflow name, then click on Create Workflow. You must see your created workflow now. Moving on to Workflow Triggers. On the Workflows page, select your new workflow. Then, at the bottom of the page, ensure that the Graph tab is selected. Choose Add Trigger to create a new trigger. Clone existing to reuse a trigger, or add new to create one from scratch. If you select the wrong trigger, choose it on the graph and click Remove. Select a trigger type, Schedule, on demand, or event bridge event. For schedule, choose a frequency or use custom to enter a cron expression. For event bridge, set the number of events and optional time delay defaults to 15 minutes. Choose add. The trigger appears on the graph with a placeholder add node. In the example below, the start trigger is a schedule trigger named month close 1. If you added a new trigger, select the add node placeholder. Make sure the start trigger is selected, then choose add jobs/crawlers to trigger. Select one or more jobs or crawlers, then choose add. The trigger is saved and connected to the selected jobs or crawlers on the graph. Build the full workflow by adding multiple triggers and jobs/crawlers to automate orchestration. A single job can have multiple triggers, depending on the use case. If you add the wrong job or crawler, select the trigger or connector and choose Remove. Here you can see the trigger created, and you can add more nodes depending on your use case. Next is activating/deactivating triggers. Open the AWS Glue console and go to Triggers under ETL. Select the trigger you want to modify. From the Action menu, choose Enable Trigger to activate or Disable Trigger to deactivate. Next is Editing Workflow Triggers. Open the AWS Glue console and go to Triggers under ETL. Search for the trigger you want to edit. Click the trigger name to open and modify its settings. Click on the Edit trigger at the upper right side. On the Step 1, click Edit to edit the scheduled time for this trigger to run. Step 1 will differ to each of triggers, as one trigger may be on demand, by event, or by schedule. On Step 2, you can edit which jobs crawlers you want to run. Once validated, click Update button. Next is job monitoring. Go to the AWS console homepage, then search for Glue. Then, on the navigation panel, choose Job Run Monitoring under ETL Jobs. First, we will discuss about checking the job error logs. Open the AWS Glue consoles, search for the job with errors, and go to the Runs tab. Click Error Logs to open CloudWatch. And go to the Runs tab, click Error Logs to open CliTide in CloudWatch. Find the log stream, look for the one without blue at the end. Review the logs for detailed job run information and error messages. Use CTRL-BJ or colors like error to quickly locate the problem. Example error: 0 date value prohibited on how to check the job run statuses. Here you can see the diagram on how the job run statuses work. Failed ED. The job exceeded its maximum allowed concurrent runs, or terminated with an unknown exit code. Error. A workflow, schedule trigger, or event trigger tried to run a deleted job. Timeout. The job ran longer than the specified timeout and was automatically stopped. That is all for the AWS Glue Training. Thank you.